Hi, I'm Andrew Barbera.
I'm Brian Morissette.
I'm Nico Paoli.
And I'm Marina Tarsi.
And this is documenting the history of industrial Venice. Throughout the late 19th century, Venice became a hub for industry due to its location on the water and access to the railroad. However, as industry began to decline over time, the city itself began to switch over to a more tourism-centric economy. This comes with the caveat, however, that a lot of the industrial history of Venice is at risk of being lost, as a lot of these former factories and businesses are converted into hotels and apartments, and their stories are being forgotten about by the general populace.
Some previous steps have been taken to explore and preserve the industrial history of Giudecca. Our sponsor, Dr. Pietro Lindo, did research for his book on Giudecca, which inspired the industrial Giudecca team from last spring who came here. However, a compiled source does not exist for the rest of Venice yet, and so that's where we come in. A lot of this history is scattered across different sources like maps, newspapers, commercial guides, and oral histories. The most detailed sources are these commercial guides, which is a book listing all of the businesses and commercial activities occurring in Venice for 1 year. You can think of it as a phone book. It came out every year, listing everything going on. One place that stores these commercial guides is the Carini Stampaglia Library, which has 45 of them between 1846 and 1913.
And so our mission is to provide tools and resources through these commercial guides to support the preservation of this industrial history and really give a broader audience access and the ability to provide further in-depth research. We're going to do this by first preserving these documents, these primary sources, analyzing these commercial guides and maps that already exist, mapping them digitally with a platform that anyone can see, and then putting that all online, making the commercial guides accessible to everyone.
So the first step in achieving this mission is to transform physical primary sources that contain very valuable industrial information into digital sources. So that, for example, our commercial guides. So these commercial guides have very important industrial information that we're trying to transition from physical to digital, so that increases accessibility and its usability, increasing the possibility for more future work to be done on this important information. So firstly, we established a relationship with the Carini Library, who houses these commercial guides, and in order to collaborate with them and gain access to the commercial guides that they have, which is 45 commercial guides spanning from, as Marina was saying earlier, 1846 to 1913. So after we collected all 45 commercial guides, the Carini Library gave us a room to scan it, as well as a scanner given to us by our sponsors at Serendipity. And that brings us to our three-step approach to digitization, which involved scanning, processing, and OCR. OCR stands for Optical Character Recognition, allowing for PDFs to be converted into machine-readable text, allowing it to be searchable and usable. So for scanning, in order to take the most high-quality images as possible with our scanner, we perform trial and error with different kinds of factors like artificial versus natural light, the scanner software settings itself, as well as things like the binding, placement on the sheet, all kinds of different factors to try to really drill in on the best kind of process to get high-quality raw images. So then, after we got those raw images, there were still a couple mistakes with them, so we had to put them into a processing software called ScanTailor, which allowed us to straighten the text, de-warp it, pretty much prepare it to be OCR. So because in order for OCR to work effectively, the text has to be clear and straight. So we took these processed images, put them back into the scanner's OCR software, performed OCR, and then we repeated that three-step process for all 45 commercial guides, which resulted in just over 13,000 pages of digitized commercial guide content.
Next, one application of these commercial guides that our team came up with was to create a list of industries found within the commercial guides, and and then compile them within a database alongside additional data from other primary sources. Some of these primary sources were these 3 maps that we received from our sponsors. Each of these maps contain locations as well as a concise list of different industries that have existed within Venice, alongside additional information such as employment data as well as start and close dates. We then compiled all this data into a concise spreadsheet, and in order to verify the existence of each of these companies, we started out by checking for the company name, and then we used the search functionality of our newly scanned commercial guides in order to search for them, verify that we had the correct industry by making sure that it matched with the industry listed within the commercial guide itself, and then recording the address as listed within the commercial guides.
So the next step to complete our goal was to map the selected industries from the commercial guides and the list that we were given. The first step in this was to verify all of the addresses. Since most of it came from the commercial guides, those were in the format of a street name and a number, which pinpointed each industry to the nearest church, whereas in modern day Venice, they follow the sesteri and number format for addresses. So we checked with our physical maps with online map resources to verify all of the addresses that we were given to make sure they were accurate to modern day Venice. And then from there, once we had all of the addresses, we took our final spreadsheet and created a map on ArcGIS.
The last step was compiling all this data, all of our commercial guides, and making them available to the public through the Commercial Guide Digital Library, which we will talk more about later, and all of its features. This brings us into we're able to use this website to extract a lot of our findings from the commercial guides.
To start off, we found several gaps and inconsistencies within the commercial guide collection of the Carini Sampolia. This consisted of missing years, as well as inconsistent conditions and inconsistent content. For example, here's our timeline of the commercial guides that we had available. There was nothing prior to 1846, as well as nothing following 1913. And in between there, we still had a large gap from 1858 to 1868. So those are 10 years where we don't have any information on industry yet. As for the inconsistent format, here's an example. In 1880, the commercial guide followed a single column, which transitioned to a double column format, making it difficult for OCR and being able to analyze these the same way. And as for condition, you can see in the 1875 book, it's mostly intact and looks pretty good, whereas the 1901, you can see the cover is falling apart, the pages are ripped a little bit, so they varied greatly in condition.
So even with all these problems we found with commercial guides, we're still able to discover that there's actually lots of hidden gems within them, in addition to the expected basic industry information like name and address. So for example, there is extensive information on specific industries, in particular maritime. There were pages and pages of data on maritime industries such as shipyards, employment information, trade routes, etc. All these kinds of extensive information on something like maritime. Additionally, there were specific advertisements for industries at the end of every commercial guide. This consisted of more detailed information about these industries, the products they sold, the kind of role they were playing at the time of their operation. So these are just a couple of those hidden gems we found, but overall, it serves to allow for a lot of interesting work to be done in addition to just what we've been doing with our ArcGIS and our database, given all this extensive information. A lot more findings to come.
Now moving on to some of the findings we found using our database, we found that the most prominent industries were printing and typography, the production of glass beads, a lot of food industries, as well as furniture production. We also noticed that there were a lot of smaller miscellaneous industries within the historic city of Venice, showing the industrial potential that the city used to have. Now, for the breakdown per sentieri, we noticed that there were a lot of these industries were located in Cannaregio, which is something we did not anticipate going in. However, when we added the data from the industrial Giudecca team, you can see that industry within Giudecca takes around 1/3 of the industry throughout the historic city of Venice. However, a large majority of that is still located to the historic city of Venice, showing how much potential research there is in looking into some of the history and stories within the main 6 sentieri.
So our first main deliverable was our completed database and ArcGIS map, as I mentioned earlier. Here's our completed map where each pin locates one of our selected industries that we compiled. We shortened it down to about 114, but there are so many. And then when you select a point, you can see all of the catalog data. For example, this is a large-scale lace production factory in Castello.
Now, our second deliverable is our commercial guide digital library. The first part of this is just providing all the PDFs on our website. Here, the digital library provides all 45 scanned PDFs that we received from the Carini Library. All of them have been digitized and are easy to view. You can see they're all searchable, all machine-readable text. It makes it very quick to go through and search through these documents. This is important not only because it speeds things up, but it also reduces the number of hands on these documents and allows them to be preserved for longer. The second, more exciting part of our website is the advanced search function that lets you search all of the commercial guides in the database all at once. Here I can search for the Capati Company, which is a sparkling water factory, and within seconds I can already see there's Capati Emilio with the address from every commercial guide just from a simple search. This also uncovers new patterns. I can already see the opening year of the Capati Company was 1874. I can scroll down to the bottom and I see that the last year that this company shows up is in 1880. So in about 1 minute, I'm able to find the company, its address, and its opening and closing dates. So this really increases this entire platform, the accessibility of these documents. Anyone has access to these and they can research, uncover new patterns, and really just expand the knowledge of industrial history in Venice. And like I said before, it's really interesting to see that the digital platform uncovers brand new patterns that will take a really long time to see in just paper documents.
So in conclusion, the work that we've done here, more than anything else, lays a foundation for future projects. And it does this by opening the door to future work that was previously unfeasible or not even possible. So having these commercial guides with so much valuable information, not only about industry, but other aspects of Venice's history and culture, that can be accessible to a broad audience and also in a format that can be easily searchable and worked with, it opens the door to all kinds of important work to be done and important findings to come from. So to get into a few of these specific recommendations that we have, we first have the Industrial Venice Continuation, which would be a direct continuation of our work here in Venice. This would mainly involve filling in the gaps and holes in our database and our commercial guide scanning. So this would involve going to other places in Venice that hold commercial guides, such as the Marciano Library. If they have the years that we missed, it would make our database and our website more comprehensive, more accurate, allowing for better use. Next, we have Stories of Industrial Venice. So this would consist of a team going into or using the sources that are a little more dense, a little more rich, like the commercial or like the industrial ads we found in the commercial guides, like the newspapers found at the Carini Library, using these sources to really develop more specific and detailed narratives and stories on specific industries to kind of see their role over time in Venice's industrial evolution. And then lastly, we have Maritime Venice, and that would be using all the different all the extensive maritime information found in the commercial guides to kind of do what we were doing with our database and our ArcGIS to jot down where they are, information about them, like employment information, to start to develop narratives and findings about maritime's role in Venice and its influence on the economy over time as it evolved. So this concludes our presentation. I'd like to bring us to some acknowledgements.
Some acknowledgements we'd like to thank Ruth and Fran, our WPI advisors, for this project, for their continued help throughout IQP and this whole process. We'd also like to thank our sponsors, Dr. Paige Orlando and Fabio Guerrero, for all their help and resources that they provided us throughout this term to help us with this process. We'd also like to thank Barbara and everyone at the Carini Stavalia Library for giving us a great welcoming environment and providing us all the tools we needed for this digitization effort, as well as Melissa Butler for helping us during the preliminary phases of our project and helping it get off the ground. Grazie.